interested to make little sketches, and I was often standing there with eyes batted work. But it was a lot of fun because it's the type of things that you learn and that you know, but when you're just looking at grip files and it screens the whole time, you don't have to think about it anymore. So.
Good day everybody, I'm Charlie Hewitt from Ardent Training and I'm here today at Les Sables d'Olonne, which is the home of the Golden Globe Race. The Golden Globe Race is an event which celebrates the achievement of Robin Knox-Johnston in 1968, which was when there were 9 sailors all competing to be the first person to sail around the world non-stop, single-handedly. In 2018, we had the 50-year anniversary, and again, we had sailors attempting to sail around the world with the same technology and vessels that were available in 1968. 4 years later, we're on the second edition of the retro version of the Golden Globe Race, and I'm here at the finish line, which has been super exciting. This week, we've had Simon Kerwin come in. He had the line honours, although was in Chichester class. We've had the winner of the Golden Globe Race, which was Kirsten Neuschäfer. She's the first woman to complete the Golden Globe Race, and she's just gone and won it. And we've also had Abhilash Tommy, who is an inspiration in his own right, who's come in second place. Out there's still one sailor remaining, who will probably cross the line in about 2 weeks' time, and that's Michael Guggenberger. So there were 16 sailors who started the race back in September last year, and over the last 8 months, they have been sailing around the world single-handedly, unassisted, non-stop, and with only the technology that was available in 1968. That means no iPhones, no Kindle, no GPS, no navigation instruments. They've been doing this all with just a sextant and the stars. And so it's been an incredible experience to be here, to see these guys coming across the line, and to be here in Les Sables d'Olonne, going and visiting the boats and meeting the skippers. It's been absolutely fantastic. And I'm super excited to tell you that we've got the opportunity to speak to Kirsten later on and find out all about how she navigated this incredible race. Hello, Kirsten. Thank you very much for agreeing to speak to me and all our Ardent Training students today, and for inviting me aboard Minnehaha. It's been a huge pleasure to be part of the team and talk to your adventure, and thank you very much.
For me, it's a real honour, especially since you were the one who coerced me into doing this race, and I wouldn't have missed it for the world. And not to mention the fact that you've been one of the managers on the team, so it's a very small way for me to try and reciprocate for everything that you've done.
Oh, thanks very much. So I've just come up with a list of rather nerdy navigation-related questions that I thought might interest some of the guys that are our students, and myself and some of our other navigation instructors came up with the questions, so I hope you don't mind. Hopefully they'll be a bit different to some of the other questions you've answered already over this last couple of days. So would you mind just telling us what your daily routine was like when it comes to navigating the vessel, taking the sights? Did you have a set routine of ones you would aim to get?
Yes, very much. In fact, the daily routine, whether it was related to the navigation or not, very much revolved around the celestial sight. So I would usually try and take a sight in the morning and try and get it to give me a longitude, because if you could get it to be on 90 degrees, you'd have a pretty perfect longitude. So you could start quite early in the morning, any time that the sun was anything from 17 up to 25 degrees above the horizon would give you a pretty accurate longitude. So I'd usually always be awake before sunrise, and then the first thing I'd do, I'd set my watch. I'd have two. One was functioning as the ship's clock, and the other one was my wristwatch. But my wristwatch and the other one, they'd lose on average about 15 seconds a day, which after a while I was pretty confident that it was 15 seconds, but I'd have to wind up the other one because I wasn't wearing it, and it's a moving watch, and this one I'd have to set. So that was the first thing, because the time signal comes through clearly in the mornings. The later you wait, the less clear it is. And then I'd take the first sight, and then from the first sight, having a pretty accurate longitude, I'd calculate when it would be noon and when I'd be able to take a noon sight. And then I'd try and get the noon sight, so that I have my latitude. But sometimes you just wouldn't get a noon sight because it was cloudy, or the other thing is sometimes I'd actually have to alter the course of the boat to take a sight because I didn't want to get the sextant full of spray, or if you were beating to windward, it's kind of difficult to take a sight. And then I didn't want to be lingering and loitering around on the wrong course. So instead of doing a noon sight where you really stand around for quite a long time to be sure that you've got your exact noon sight, I'd just take one that was very close to noon. And you'd still get a latitude because you'd still work out having the thing on 0. So, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. So sometimes in the Southern Ocean, or very often in the Southern Ocean, it gets really clouded and clouded over like a lot of the time, right? It can be quite hard to find sun sights. So how many days did you go at one time without managing to catch a sight?
So I was quite lucky because I never went for more than about 4 days. That would probably have been my max, that I didn't see anything at all. And it's amazing though that often the sun very weakly still shines through the clouds and you still manage to get a sight. It might not be very accurate because you might not exactly, get the edge of the disc that you're looking at, but it still does give you a good indication. So I was quite lucky, not more than about 4 days. Of course, it was the most stressful of those days were during being close to the exclusion zone, because I didn't want to end up dropping further south than the exclusion zone. And what's more is, because I already lost 3 propellers for the trailing log, I only had 1. So I only used that if I was making landfall. So it was a bit of a guessing game, but it's amazing that you actually start getting a good feel for things in the boat and speeds and all the rest.
Yeah, you lost some of your trailing logs, like maybe to sharks or something, or for whatever reason. But for the rest of the time, then you must have gone, weeks before sighting land sometimes. So do you think you had quite an accurate idea of the speed that Minnehaha was doing, and was your EPs coming out more accurately than you thought? Or?
I think I had quite an accurate idea of the speed she was doing, but I was kind of playing a bit of a game with myself to underestimate the speed, because it was always a great joy if I got my noon sight and position from the morning sight together with the noon sight, and I landed up being 20 or 30 miles ahead of what my EP was. So it was a little bit of a game. I knew I was underestimating the speed, and I knew I should up my guesstimates, but I thought I'd rather have it that way than the other way around. However, if I was approaching land, obviously I'd put my last propeller in then, and then things would become a lot more accurate. But if I was in any doubt, I was going to overestimate my speed, because I'd rather judge myself to be closer to land than further away from land. So. And I have to mention that I actually practiced all the way from Canada down to Cape Town. Obviously I was navigating parallel with the GPS there, but I practiced without a trailing log for exactly those kind of eventualities of losing your propellers, or just not feel like having them in because there's sargasso seaweed, or because they're slowing you down, or whatever the case may be. So I'd already started practicing ahead of time for it as well.
That's super organised of you, really cool. So with the meteorology then, you had no access to weather routing, and you were just using traditional techniques, the odd weather facts. So when you were getting limited meteorological information, did you find yourself making little scribbles, or?
Yes, I did actually, because weather facts was kind of the main thing, but a lot of the stations don't transmit weather facts anymore. So, for example, I had weather facts right up to the Canaries, and then after that I had nothing right up until Australia again. But I had Cape Town radio broadcasting weather, and it was quite a basic kind of broadcast each time, but they'd give you the basic wind directions, and I was listening to them even when I was well out of their forecasting area, because you know that the system's always moving from west to east, so you know they're always coming up from behind you. So just listening to what was happening behind me gave me a good idea of what might be approaching. But I very much did make little sketches, and I was often standing there, buyer's ballot law, okay, the wind's blowing in my back, so the low pressures are going to be whatever side, depending on which hemisphere I was in. But it was a lot of fun because it's the type of things that you learn and that you know, but when you're just looking at grip files and it screens the whole time, you don't have to think about it anymore. So it was fun making little sketches and all that kind of thing, and using things like buyer's ballot law, and it was one of those aspects I just really appreciated about the race.
And your boat was very well prepared for this boat, and was very well prepared for this race, and it seemed as though you had much fewer breakages than some of the other competitors. So did you have a routine for kind of checking things and carrying out maintenance whilst underway?
Yeah, certainly. I knew there were certain, say, lines that were chafing a little bit. For example, I had chafe on the main halyard whenever I had the full main up. So I'd often avoid having the full main up and rather just have it reefed down to one. But if I needed that extra canvas, then I put another sheath of thicker rope over it and whip it and test, check those things quite frequently. Or if I had the spinnaker up with a pole, then I'd have a bit of halyard chafe on the spinnaker too, and the last thing you want to wake up at night with your spinnaker in the water and your halyard chafe through and lost, and you have to try and feed it through the mast again on your own on a moving boat at sea. Then I'd rather go to the whole mission of dropping the spinnaker and having to wool it up again so that I could hoist it, just so that I could be sure that the halyard wasn't chafing, or just lower the spinnaker by a couple of centimeters or pull it higher by a couple of centimeters. So for basic things like that, I definitely had my routine. And then every morning I'd take a walk around the deck and check that everything looks the way it should be. I'd check the split pins, check that nothing looked bent or warped or distorted. I'd feel the tension of the stays and the shrouds and everything, and just see that doesn't look like something is really, really wrong. And then every time it was calm enough, I didn't do it very often, I must have done about 3 times, but I'd also go up the mast and just check that everything's looking well up top there. But I think 80% of that was already taken care of in the preparation.
And so what advice would you have for somebody else that was doing this race? Like, if you knew that somebody was entering a race next week, what would be your final words for them? Like, what would be your advice to them before they left?
My advice would be start preparing your boat really, really well. Spare no expenses on the materials you're going to use. And get to know your boat. That for me was also a huge benefit. A lot of people said it seems a bit daft that you sailed all the way from Canada down to South Africa and then from South Africa up to France, but that gave me a hell of a lot more sea time, and that was good times for things to break, so that would point out any potential weakness that I could fix well before the race. So the sooner you can enter and start preparing, the better off, because don't underestimate how much time the prep is going to take. If you can do the majority, as much of the work yourself and reef it, that's going to help you hugely, because it's going to help you be able to fix things that might potentially break underway. And it's also going to give you a very good idea of what tools and spares to take so that you can do repairs when you're underway. But yeah, 80% of it for you is all going to be in the preparation.
Listen, thank you very much for answering my questions. It's been an absolute pleasure, and so cool to watch your race. I'll not keep you any longer, so thanks so much.
It's really my pleasure. Thank you for getting me hooked on the idea of doing the race.
No worries.